Before I do start this video, make sure to use my TCG player affiliate down below if you're looking for any of these singles that I talk about today. Also, this channel is sponsored by Arcane Fortress. If you're looking for the best deck boxes around, make sure to use my link down below in the description to check them out. One other way you can support the channel is by becoming a patron. There are some great benefits of being a patron to the channel, such as giveaways, deck advice, and more when you do join. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today in PubStomp MTG, and in this video today, I'll be focusing on upgrading the most wanted Precon deck for the new Outlaws of Thunder Junction set. So this one is focusing on Outlaws. It's like a category like Party where you have a certain amount of creatures that fit the bill for Outlaws specifically. And then it also does have another sub-theme of Treasure. Of course, you're buying the Outlaws with your treasure that you do make. So of course, with EDH and people loving their treasures, this is going to be a slam dunk for a lot of different people. And just to kind of give you an overview of how I do these Precon upgrades, I will first focus on the commanders and the new cards of the deck. Then later on, I will focus on the new reprints of the deck too. Then after that, I will talk about 10 upgrades that you could put in the deck. I'm not going to focus on lands too much, but I will focus on 10 cards that could really boost the power level of your deck. So with all that said, let's jump right into it. So there are two commanders that you can choose from in this deck. The front-facing commander with Olivia, Opulent Outlaw. She does read for 1 red, white, and a black legendary creature, Vampire Assassin. Love the assassin typing on this, by the way. She does have flying and lifelink. Whenever one or more outlaws you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token that does include herself, because assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, and warlocks are outlaws. She also does have the pay 3, sacrifice 2 treasures, put 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control, activate only as a sorcery. So this one is pretty neat. If you do have 3 different creatures on the battlefield and you swing at each opponent, you will get 3 treasure tokens in return. And plus you can sacrifice 2 of those and pay a couple mana so that you can put 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control. So I feel like this can be busted in some situations where you go into extra combats with aggravated assault, for example. If you do have a way to produce 2 more treasure tokens, you can go into infinite combats. The secondary commander of this deck is Vihan Goldwaker. I'm pretty sure I butchered that name completely, but let's read what it does. So for red, white, and a black legendary creature, Dwarf Warlock. Other outlaws you control have vigilance and haste, so unfortunately it won't have haste and vigilance itself because it's other outlaws. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have treasures you control become 3/3 construct, assassin, artifact creatures in addition to their other types until end of turn. So in a lot of different ways, this can be pretty busted. I do like the idea that your treasures become just constructs on the battlefield, and because they are assassins, they will have vigilance and haste, so you can tap them if you needed to after combat damage. And of course, this will just give you another reason why Dockside Extortionist is absolutely busted. So both of these do pretty much have a straightforward gameplay, and I personally like Olivia a little better, mainly because it has the option of making treasure tokens and could buff up all your guys if you do have excess treasure tokens. So personally, I would go with Olivia if I were you, but you can make your own decision when making this deck. So now that I've talked about the commanders, I do now want to focus on the new cards of the entire deck. There's a lot of fun ones, especially that synergize with those mercenaries, rogues, and all those other outlaws. For example, Back in Town. Return target X outlaw creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield directly. All you have to do is pay into that X cost. So this is excellent. I know 3 mana and X might seem like a lot, but say for example you pay 5 into the X ability, you could just return 5 outlaw creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield, all for 8 mana. Another great card I do want to focus on is surprisingly an angel with Angelic Sellsword. So for 4 and a white, it does have flying and vigilance. Whenever Angelic Sellsword or another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token, and it does have that ability to tap target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. And that will be important for its other ability. Whenever it does attack, if its power is 6 or greater, draw a card. So if you do have a lot of those mercenaries that could tap to give it +1/+0, you can take advantage of that with Angelic Sellsword. There is also a pretty good artifact in the deck called Bounty Board. So for 3 mana, it is a manalith basically, adding 1 mana of any color color when you do tap it, but it does have some other great abilities that make it a little bit more versatile. You can pay 1 and tap it, put a bounty counter on target creature, activate only as a sorcery, and whenever a creature with a bounty counter on it dies, each of its controllers and opponents draw a card and you gain 2 life. So this doesn't seem too great in the aspect that you're giving your opponent's card draw, but when you think about it, if you put a bounty counter on a specific creature, maybe a lot of your opponents may be incentivized to destroy that specific creature on the battlefield so that they could get some card draw. So you can use this more politically. So I do believe this could be a pretty decent option overall in the deck for sure. Another card I do want to focus on is Greywater's Fixer, mainly because it does have each outlaw creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value. So in a weird way, this kind of feels like Yawgmoth's Will, obviously only for outlaws specifically, because with Yawgmoth's Will you have that ability to cast anything from your graveyard. Of course, with this specific instance though, it's only focusing on outlaws specifically, and they'll basically die because they're only going to be tokens of that creature specifically too. So I mean, again, the comparison of Yawgmoth's Will is probably not the greatest example, but it's similar in the way where you could recur a big giant threat from your graveyard to the battlefield if you wanted to. Another pretty decent card in the 99th for your outlaw synergies is Discreet Retreat. So for 3 and a black, it does have Enchant Land. Enchanted Land has tap for 2 mana of any one color, spend this mana only to cast outlaw spells or activate abilities from outlaw sources. And whenever you cast your first outlaw spell each turn, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So this is perfect. What I do like about this, even though it is 4 mana, it is a pretty good engine because, of course, you are replacing the outlaw you do cast with another card draw and can give you additional mana to cast outlaw spells too. But let's escape from the grave and talk about Charred Grave Robber. This one is pretty good because for 2 and a black, when it does enter the battlefield, return target outlaw card from your graveyard to your hand. It does also have the escape cost for 3 and double black, exile 4 other cards from your graveyard, and Charred Grave Robber escapes with a +1/+1 counter on it. So the downside of playing a heavy creature deck is the fact that a lot of people may just remove them and they go to the graveyard. But with this, you can just have the ability to recur them back from the graveyard into your hand so that you can replay them later on. And what's very nice about this ability, as long as he doesn't get exiled, you can constantly escape him if he's in the graveyard so that you could just return another outlaw to your hand that way. But I do want to talk about one more card with We Ride at Dawn. This is probably going to be one of the best cards you can play in this deck and many other decks. This is going to be an absolute staple because it does have for the ability for 2 and a white. Legendary creature spells you cast have Convoke, and whenever your commander does attack, you create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token. This is going to be a very big staple for those high CMC commanders or even commanders that go to the command zone a lot. Of course, this will focus on legendary creatures, so if you do have a big legendary creature deck, this is going to be an absolute slam dunk, mainly because legendary creature spells you cast have Convoke. That's going to be super powerful. Plus, the more you do attack, the more mercenary tokens you are going to make, and if your commander does go to the command zone, you can just tap all those mercenaries and other creatures you control to basically convoke your commander out for free if you have enough creatures on the battlefield. So again, We Ride at Dawn is possibly going to be one of the best commander staples in this deck, at least specifically, but now I do want to focus on the deck and talk about the reprints. Alright, so I'm on MTG Goldfish. This is just a great website just to check out the prices of the deck and just to kind of get a scope of what cards are really in there. There are 2 $10 reprints, which I'm kind of surprised they're $10, like Brina the Demigod. This was a Precon commander all the way back in Strixhaven and also Command Beacon. And again, I didn't realize it shot up like that in price. I do remember hearing some chitter chatter about Brina being a CDH card, in most notably Timna Crom. There are some other ones like Vainwitch Coven. This was also in Strixhaven, focusing on gaining life, which I don't feel like you necessarily need to focus on too much in this deck. I mean, Olivia is a lifelink commander. Maybe they added some lifelink sub-theme in here. Same thing goes for the Witch of the Moors. This just has the ability if you gain life. This turn, each opponent sacrifices a creature and you return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So that's pretty useful. I mean, if we don't have Olivia out, it's not going to really be doing much for us because there's not a whole lot of lifelink options. But you have a lot of typical Massacre Girl, Direfleet Ravager, a lot of these specific kind of cards that are mainly in that outlaw theme with like rogues, mercenaries, warlocks, and pirates, I believe, and assassins. So you got a whole big category to work with. Also, I'm kind of glad they reprinted Mary the Killing Quill, mainly because I was afraid this was going to go up in price if this was not reprinted in the deck, but luckily when I saw it, I was like, phew, I don't have to worry about running to get my copy because this absolutely synergizes with the outlaw Outlaws a lot. Also, of course, Academy Manufacturer. This is just a great card in any token deck that you're focusing on either food, clue, or even treasure tokens. But I would say what's very important about this deck is the fact that the mana base is pretty incredible. This is a lot better than previous deck lists that you have seen in the past. They reprinted the fast lands in this, like Blackleaf Cliffs. There is also the pain lands like Battlefield Forge that focuses on giving you a mana of one of those Boros color combinations to deal 1 damage to you. Dragon Skull Summit, just the check lands to make sure that you're really getting the best kind of land base that you can in a Precon. I know they can't reprint everything like fetch lands or even shock lands in one. They also do have some of the filter lands like Fetid Heath and also Rugged Prairie, just filtering for specific mana that you do need. So these are awesome reprints as well in the deck. Even though they have been reprinted a couple times in various sets, you'll see a lot of different sets. The most recent ones in here specifically, of course, they'll have different arts when you get the Precon deck. Also, another fun one is Reign of Riches because, of course, you'll make 2 treasure tokens when it enters the battlefield, and it does have the most important ability that the first spell you cast each turn with mana from a treasure that was spent from it has Cascade. So this, of course, can be absolutely brutal because, of course, with Olivia, we're going to be making treasures all the time. So obviously, this is going to be a great include with Reign of Riches. And that's mainly it for the Precon. Of course, there's a lot of other ones that are notable like Lightning Greaves and other things as well, but these are just the main ones I did want to highlight in this deck specifically. And again, there's a decent amount of upgrades you could take advantage of course, if we go into that outlaw theme of talking about different creature types that fit in there. We could potentially be here all day, but I do want to focus on cards from the set. For example, Hellspur Brute and Caught in the Crossfire are excellent because they focus on outlaws. Hellspur Brute basically does have affinity for outlaws, and so you could just possibly cast this for just 1 red mana alone. So this isn't a bad rate, having a 5/4 body with trample being only 1 red mana if you do have enough outlaws on the battlefield. Also with Caught in the Crossfire, it's an excellent modal option. Of course, we're probably most likely going to be choosing that second option where you pay an additional 1 mana to deal 2 damage to each non-outlaw creature, because I don't know if you want to be dealing damage to your own creatures. There are also some synergistic cards in the set like Laughing Jasper Flint. First of all, I have to comment on the name. That's probably one of the best ones. And also Hellspur Posse Boss. With Laughing Jasper Flint, it does have the ability creatures you control but don't own are mercenaries in addition to their other types. And at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of target opponent's library, where X is the number of outlaws you control. So basically, if we have a bunch of outlaws, which of course we're in an outlaw deck, we're going to be exiling a lot of cards. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from among those cards, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells, so this is a great effect to seal our opponent's library. And of course, the art is absolutely amazing. I love what they did with a lot of the different lizards in this set. I'm not sure why they didn't make them Viashinos, but again, lizards are pretty fitting, especially that looks like a lizard that's in the desert for sure. Besides that point, Hellspur Posse Boss is also pretty good too, because other outlaws you control have haste. That's pretty good because we want to be swinging away so that we can make a treasure with Olivia. And when he does enter the battlefield, you could create 2 1/1 red mercenary creature tokens with that tap ability to give a creature +1/+0. So this might not seem like a lot being a 2/4 body, but again, giving your outlaws haste and having the option to basically put 3 different bodies on the battlefield so that we could swing in, maybe connect, and get more treasure with Olivia. Yeah, sign me up. I did want to move back to Fallout a little bit and talk about Kellogg Dangerous Mind. This is excellent in this deck because it does have first strike and haste, and when it does attack, you create a treasure token. Plus, you can sacrifice 5 treasures. Of course, we are in a treasure theme, so we can make a lot of treasures. And then you can gain control of target creature for as long as you control Kellogg, and you can only activate it as a sorcery. I will say this does synergize with Jasper Flint just a little bit for that hijack effect, but having the ability to make treasure tokens whenever it does attack is going to be very good with our commander. Speaking of treasure, I did want to mention Lotho Corrupt Sheriff, mainly because whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. That's simple enough. Just having that constant way to potentially get triggers to make more treasures on the battlefield will be a benefit for us. Also, because we are in a little bit of an aggressive theme, Massacre Girl, Known Killer, will be a little bit of a deterrent for our opponents to block our creatures, mainly because our creatures will have Wither. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, if that toughness was less than 1, you draw a card. So either you can swing away and potentially get some treasure tokens, but if they do decide to block, they could potentially lose their creature to the Wither ability, and we could draw cards. But one of the best outlaws you can be playing in this deck is Swashbuckler Extraordinaire, and I'll explain my reasoning behind it, but let's first read what it does. So for 2 and a red, it's a 2/2 body. When it does enter the battlefield, you create a treasure token, and whenever you attack, you may sacrifice 1 or more treasures. When you do, up to that many target creatures gain double strike until end of turn. So the way that Olivia works is whenever 1 or more outlaws you control deal combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token. So if you do give for example, Olivia double strike off of Swashbuckler's ability, and you swing in with Olivia, you will get that first strike damage in, and then you'll get a treasure token, and then you'll get that double strike damage hitting that person again and getting another treasure token. And let's just scale that up a little bit. Let's just say, for example, you gave 3 different creatures double strike with Swashbuckler's ability. Instead of just getting 3 treasure tokens when swinging at 3 different players, you will get 6 treasure tokens. So correct me if I'm wrong if I'm not reading that right, but I'm pretty sure that's how the ruling works because it's a separate instance of combat damage. Either way, giving double strike to your Olivia is going to be very good regardless if it doesn't work or if it does work. Outside of Olivia, there's also a lot of different ways we could get treasure based off of combat damage. For example, Professional Facebreaker and Grim Hireling will get the job done for you. And I will just say this just for a forewarning, Grim Hireling is a rogue, so technically it is an outlaw and it wasn't reprinted in this deck, so depending on when you watch this video, it may or may have not spiked too much. But it does have a better version of Olivia's ability. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create 2 treasure tokens, so potentially you can make 6 treasure tokens if you connect to each person. It also does have a secondary ability to sacrifice X treasure tokens and then give a creature -X/-X. So this is a treasure generator and a removal card. This is going to be perfect in the deck. Again, I warn you right now, it may spike. I don't know if it is or not. So a fair warning, but I do also want to mention Professional Facebreaker. This is essentially the same kind of ability Olivia does have. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token. But it does have that extra ability, sacrifice a treasure, exile the top card of your library, and you can play that card this turn. So it may not be an outlaw compared to the others, but it's a professional at what it does and gets you treasure tokens. So with all these treasure generators like Grim Hireling, Professional Facebreaker, and even our commander Olivia, we might as well take advantage of Aggravated Assault. Because this is an aggressive deck, we could absolutely take advantage of that ability to get extra combats by paying 3 and 2 red. And if we do have those extra treasure generators like Grim Hireling or Professional Facebreaker on the battlefield with our commander, we could potentially get enough treasure to get infinite combats swinging for the game. This is definitely a great win con you could add to the deck. Even if you're going for 1 extra combat, you're probably going to be winning the game depending on how much life your opponents do have. So I absolutely can't recommend this enough in the deck. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on upgrading the most wanted deck for the Outlaws of Thunder Junction set. This is probably my second favorite deck of the entire series. I absolutely love the Gonti deck, and I'm definitely planning on building that deck specifically. But I do feel like Olivia Opulent Outlaw is going to be a pretty incredible commander. It is a mana sink, because if you do sacrifice 2 treasure tokens, you can constantly just put 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control. That does include Olivia. The secondary commander is pretty good too, just having all your treasure tokens become 3/3 constructs. And of course, if you do play a Dockside Extortionist beforehand, and you have a lot of treasure out on the battlefield, most likely you're going to be swinging with a lot of different creatures on the battlefield too. But let me know down below in the comments, what do you think about this deck? Are there any upgrades that I did miss that you did want to mention? Let me know again down below in the comments. Also, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.